To all the people saying we're so back because you're getting another remake, at this point, when they remake every legacy game instead of actually growing balls and making a new game, you're not coming back. You've never left. If they keep remaking games, it's almost like you've never left. They just want to remake games because they don't have any good ideas anymore. And then when they remake the game, they're going to cut out certain content and they're going to re-homogenize. They're going to homogenize the old game and the so-called modern sensibility. And you already know there's toxic discourse surrounding Persona 4 with certain kind of representation. We're not going to get into that. But I was getting called crazy a few years ago for suggesting that all of the Persona 5 milking and all the Persona 5 spin-offs and the Persona 3 remake, that all of these things were preventing Atlas, as they would any company, even as many people as they have working at Atlas. This is preventing them from moving on with the future. You know, you can't be wasting resources on making games that no one asked for and then wonder why games are getting delayed. I think Square Enix has the same problem. Not only are Square Enix games not selling as much as they would like to, part of that's because of the console exclusivity. You know, they spend ridiculous resources making games that no one wanted and then changing the formula. It's a little bit different with Square Enix, but with Atlas, there's really no excuse for Sega Atlas to be milking the remakes as they have been doing. Capcom's been doing it. Major developers have been doing this. Gaming has devolved into you're going to get a Souls-like, you're going to get a remake, or you're going to get Black Ops 7. That's what modern gaming has devolved into. And I spent the last couple weeks playing Expedition 33 and shitting on Expedition 33 because it was getting all of the praise, 10 out of 10 across the board scores, for simply adding a parry mechanic, which you don't normally see in a turn-based game. But you know what? That game at least deserves some credibility because that was a new IP and a new story, and it did some things differently from a new developer. So you know what? I'm going to apologize to Expedition 33 and say honestly that I would prefer an Expedition 33 any day of the week over remaking a classic game just to homogenize it with maybe, you know, a recoat of the graphics engine. What they showed off genuinely looks pretty terrible, and you can tell by, you know, unbiased people that may have been willing to give a remake a try. I will not be supporting this game. I will not support more remakes of older games. I just won't do it. I won't do anything more than this video, but it has to be said, you know, they called me crazy for suggesting this was pushing back the release of other games. It's objectively a roadblock in the release of Persona 6. Think about how ridiculous it is that since Persona 5 Royal, which was a re-release of Persona 5, an enhanced version, that was about 5 or 6 years ago. In that time period, we have gotten Persona 3 Remake, and now we're going to get Persona 4 Remake in the near future, it seems. Not a single official announcement for a Persona 6. And they've done numerous spin-offs and even like the shitty Chinese mobile game they've done. They're doing every game except the game that we want. And again, other companies are kind of doing the same practice. Fans will say, we want this game, the obvious next conclusion, the natural progression of the franchise. And we get, it's not just about the delay, it's that I can go into a whole diatribe, as I have in other videos, about the lack of artistic merit in doing a game like a Persona 4 remake. I don't have an issue with remasters. There are some remakes that I actually like because I haven't played the original. So like Yakuza Kiwami was a good remake, and it was largely faithful to the original. But that was closer to a one-for-one remake than what they're doing with a lot of these other games. You know, people will say Final Fantasy Rebirth, that was sort of a reimagining. That was somewhat artistic, even though it was still, you know, a form of plagiarism. But we simply don't need remakes for games like Persona 4 Golden that hold up perfectly well. It isn't a perfect game, but it still holds up well within the context of how it was made at the time that it was made. I played this game for the first time only 2 years ago, and I really enjoyed Persona 4. It certainly has its charm. There were things that were improved in other games that came after it, but it has its charm for a reason. It holds up very well, again, within the context of how it was made. And all a remake in this context serves to do is homogenize it and change the formula. And then a formerly unique game that was kind of niche at the time now just becomes whatever the flavor of the month is. So, there are numerous philosophical and actual, like, practical issues with making a remake in video games. They just don't need to exist. For those of us that view video games as an art form, replacing the people that made the game and then replacing the components that made the game, you can make an argument that it's something else entirely, but it's still insulting for it to even exist because it implies that there is something wrong with the original in the first place. And not only that, you're just repeating the same thing over and over again to the point where, again, what used to be interesting is now going to get stale because you're just going to keep remaking games right after they come out. Obviously, Persona 4 has been out for a while, but the general practice that we've seen now is companies that want to remake video games that came out in the last few years, or, just remake an entire series of games. Look at the Resident Evil series, look at, Sony with The Last of Us remake, with Horizon remake. These kind of decisions lack any artistic merit and are simply cash grabs, which is obviously what Persona 4, whatever the fuck it is, Revival is. And it doesn't even look good. It looks like a piece of shit, at least what they've shown off so far. At least Persona 3 Reload was a good quality game in and of itself. I still have problems with it being made. I don't think it should have been made at all. But at this point, what's next? Persona 5 Royal Remake or something, which would just be horrible. If you're a fan of these games, if you truly love these games, you don't want to see them remade. You simply would go back and play them. You don't need to base your feelings on nostalgia. Go back and play the game, and you'll see how good it was or wasn't. But it will be what it was. There's just nothing artistic about it, I'm telling you. If you want to play Persona 4, you have Persona 4 available. This is simply a cash grab. It was a little different with Persona 3 because they had so many different versions of that game. They had no Persona 3 FES on modern consoles. They had portable. They didn't have the original Persona 3 for whatever reason. You can play Persona 4 Golden just fine on modern consoles. So if it's not, like I said, if it's not a Souls-like, it's going to be a remake of some kind, or it's going to be Black Ops 7. This is what the video game industry has come to. So I don't want to say too much more than that. I really would like to see Persona 6. I would like to see more games like Metaphor. I would like to see more unique and original IPs from Atlus and Sega, like what they're doing with the Yakuza spin-off that they're making. So I'm not going to support this. If you're someone that wants to keep replaying the same games over and over again, but like a remake version, someone else's fan fiction, you might as well just get AI generated. It's like if I took AI generation and said, let me go take this movie from the 1900s, from like 1920s. Let me go take a Charlie Chaplin movie and let me AI upscale it. And then, by the way, I'm going to add color to it. I'm going to take a black and white classic movie and put color onto it. And like change the voice actors and change the faces and all that stuff. I don't consider this to be artistic. I think this is going in the complete opposite direction of what they should be doing. It doesn't even matter if we end up getting Persona 6, but it's an added insult that we're not even getting Persona 6. You cannot justify at this point that you have Persona 3 Reload and now Persona 4 Revival, which is also a shitty name. That should have been Persona 4 Rewind or something, right? You can't justify the moves that they're making at this company anymore. And I invest in this company, I own shares in Sega stock, and this is not what I'm investing for. Even if it makes money, the other side of me is thinking it's just pitiful. So I want to apologize to Expedition 33 because that is a game that has some artistic merit to it. I don't agree with all the hype surrounding it. I don't agree with all the decisions that they made, putting a parry mechanic at the front and center of the combat system. But Expedition 33 deserves a little bit more credit from me. That's a game I'm at least glad that game is getting attention. It deserves infinitely more attention than a Persona 4 remake gets. It's just tarnishing the franchise, and it's just further pushing the older games back and back and back onto the end of the line, the end of the shelf. Even the ones like Persona 1 and 2 that maybe could have some kind of artistic quality if they remade those games or did something with them. The games that most modern fans have never seen or heard of. Nope. They want to do a pointless cash grab remake of Persona 4, a game that should never be touched outside of the people that have never experienced it. They should be able to play it. The real version that the original team made. Modern day Atlas, these newcomers, they should not be making a game that someone else has already done. They should be making their own game, and when the time is right, giving it to us, but nothing should come before that. All hands should be on deck to make a new game and not to plagiarize someone else's work.